as we speak together the gospel acclamation found in our bulletin. Alleluia. The Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. Alleluia. The Holy Gospel according to Mark, the 10th chapter. Glory to you, O Lord. James and John, the sons of Zebedee, came forward to Jesus and said to him, "Teacher, we want you to do for us whatever we ask of you." And Jesus said to them, "What is it you want me to do for you?" And they said to him, "Grant us to sit, one at your right hand and one at your left, in your glory." But Jesus said to them, "You do not know what you are asking. Are you able to drink the cup that I drink, or be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with?" And they replied, "We are able." Then Jesus said to them, "The cup that I drink, you will drink. And with the baptism with which I am baptized, you will be baptized. But to sit at my right hand or at my left hand is not mine to grant, but it is for those for whom it has been prepared." Now when the 10 heard this, they began to be angry with James and John. So Jesus called them and said to them, "You know that among the Gentiles, those whom they recognize as the rulers lord it over them, and their great ones are tyrants over them. But it is not so among you. But whoever wishes to become great among you must be your servant. And whoever wishes to be first among you must be slave of all. For the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life a ransom for many." This is the gospel of the Lord. Praise to you, Lord Christ. Please be seated. Growing up, I liked fast cars. And when I got to be that age where I could drive a vehicle, I wanted a fast car. I liked my buddy's car. He had a '68 Mustang. I wanted a car just like that. I drove my parents nuts. And my dad was a mechanic, and he worked at a used car lot, and I think, well, now's my chance. The guy had Mustangs, he had Corvettes. I told my dad, "I don't want a Corvette, I just want a Mustang. It's less money." And I bothered him something fierce for a long time. And then around my birthday the next year, my dad said, "So you really want a Mustang?" I said, "Yeah, more than anything else." And he reached into his pocket, and I heard the keys jingle, and he put his hand upon the dining room table where we at. He goes, "Well, here you go." And he slid it over to me. It was the prettiest Hot Wheels Mustang you could ever do. He said, "You got your Mustang. I don't want to hear about it anymore." I wasn't specific enough with my request. I really didn't know any better. I think that's the way we find James and John, the sons of Zebedee, the sons of thunder. That they go to Jesus and make this request, and this request might seem strange to us, but you have to kind of look at their perspective. You see, Jesus proclaimed himself the Messiah, and so they took him at his word, but they didn't fully understand. As we've talked before, that 200 to 300 years ago, before the coming of Christ, the Greeks had come in and taken over Jerusalem and the temple, and they defiled the temple by bringing in pigs and prostitutes. And the high priest was of the family of Maccabean family. And he would not allow this happen, so he took on the Greeks, he and his sons and a bunch of followers. And the Greeks were a mighty army. But eventually, over time, and with a lot of struggle and with a lot of loss of lives and This high priest would die fighting, as would 3 of his sons. His 4th son would be the one who would vanquish the Greeks. And before he would ride triumphantly into Jerusalem, the people not only made him general of the army, but they made him high priest as well. And when he rode into Jerusalem, he rode in on a white stallion. And he was referred to as the Messiah, for they even spread palm branches on the ground in front of him when he rode into Jerusalem. I think James and John were picturing that kind of Messiah because, let's face it, that dynasty lasted for over 100 years. And so they were thinking, all right, we got us a Messiah. We got us a Messiah like the Maccabeans had. He's going to start kicking butt and taking names. It was pretty much like expecting Rambo to come in, you know? But Jesus is not Rambo. His disciples did not understand this. What they were saying was, Jesus, we want a good seat in your kingdom. We know that you're going to throw these Romans out of here and you're going to take power. And we figure since you're the head, well then we'll settle for being Secretary of State and Speaker of the House. Because when you come into your glory, we want to be with you, Jesus. And Jesus looked at him and said, you really don't know what you're asking for. Oh yes we do, Jesus. Are you sure? Are you able to drink from the cup that I must drink from and be baptized with the baptism that I will be baptized with? Yes, Jesus, we can. Do you remember in the Garden of Gethsemane, on the night that he was going to be betrayed, how he took 3 disciples to go pray with him. And he got down on his knees and he prayed so hard and so fervently, so passionately that his sweat turned to blood. And while he was praying to God, saying, Father, if you could take this cup from me, but whatever you do, let it be your will. Even he knew that cup that he must drink from was one he, as a human, did not want to drink. He understood the ramifications. These disciples had no clue. Jesus, whatever you say, I can do it. I got qualifications. I know what we can do. You just take over everything, you just get everybody out, and we'll be there with you. Jesus said, are you sure this is what you want? Absolutely, Jesus. And so Jesus says to these 2, then you shall drink from the cup that I drink from. You will be baptized with the baptism that I am baptized with. Be careful what you ask for. How many of you have ever gone through the history of what happened with all those disciples? Let me give you a rundown. Andrew, Peter's brother, who was a fisherman, died on a cross in a Grecian colony. James, the one who we are talking about this morning, he and his brother John, James was beheaded at Jerusalem. The other James, one of Jesus' brothers, was thrown from the pinnacle of the temple and then beaten to death with a club. John, the beloved disciple, the one of this story as well, he was exiled on an island called Patmos, and he spent most of his adult life into old age in exile. Some thinking that he lived in a cave most of his life there. Judas Iscariot, of course, we know he hung himself. Thaddeus, one of Jesus' brothers, also called Jude, was shot to death with arrows. Matthew, also called Levi the tax collector, was crucified in Alexandria. Nathanael, also called Bartholomew, was flayed alive and beheaded in Armenia. Peter, of course, we know is crucified head downward in Persia, or what we call now Iran. Philip was hanged against a pillar in Abyssinia. Thomas, the one we call the doubter, it is said that he was run through the body with a lance in the Indies. I guess they ended up drinking from the same cup as Jesus, didn't they? They ended up dying for the faith. And the greatest part is that out of all of these stories, of all that has been recorded in history and all of the legends passed down through history, not one of them ever recanted their faith. Not one of them ever said, "No, I don't believe." That even unto death, they were willing to trust in Jesus. You see, they got what they wished for. They asked Jesus to allow him and to allow them to drink from his cup. Be careful what you wish for. You know, today Jesus wants us to understand that he is the Savior, he is the Messiah, but not in the way the world would generally think about it. That he says true power is not in lording it over others. True power is serving others. Have you ever seen on Facebook or some other pages that the real strength is not going toe-to-toe with your enemy and shouting as loud as they can or taking the dirty route that they are? Rather, your power comes in how you respond. That if you face violence and hate, you can make the choice to respond in love. And that's where the true power is. That people can call you names and everything else because of your faith or because of the way you look or where you are from, but the power is how you respond to that. Jesus says, "I will give you everything that you need. Believe in me. Listen to my words. Love your Lord, love your neighbor, and love yourself." And if you do that, well, things will work out. But he never once told his disciples that if you do what I ask you to, it's all going to be sunshine and rainbows and unicorns and happy, happy. Because obviously you heard what happened to those disciples. What Jesus was saying was that if you are obedient to my will, if you believe, not in the here and now, but in God's kingdom for eternity, you will find a home, and you will find there your treasures built up. Don't worry about this earthly thing. Don't worry about being in power. Don't worry about grabbing that brass ring. Become the servant of all. And in doing so, you will know why I came into the world. And in doing so, you will become first. That's a hard concept for us because we're so used to earning everything. We're so used to putting in the hours. Let's face it. When we first start off in our careers, sometimes we work 2 and 3 jobs. Sometimes we want to do so good for our bosses that we not only do our jobs, but we take on additional work. And we continue to do that because we have goals that we set. We want to know that soon I might become, more important in the company. That I might not only get more responsibility, but I might get better pay. And not only will I get better pay, but I will have people that look up to me. And people will have to answer to me. And some people are so dedicated to that, making sure that they reach for that brass ring, making sure that they can be comfortable in their retirement, making sure that they get so much wealth that they can do whatever they want. They forget about what is most important. I know a lot of successful people who have lost their family, who have lost their spouses, because they were so busy trying to establish themselves. They were so busy reaching for what they thought was power in this world, which is usually equated with money and status, that they ignored the ones who loved them the most. You see, their eye was on a prize that is only temporary. God says, follow me and keep your eye on the eternal. That by living as Jesus lived, by emulating what he did and said and how he went through his life ministering to others, is the way that we should be doing things. That is how we get ahead. That is how we become successful. And it's not success for this world, but success for the world to come. There was a man who lived in one of the boroughs of New York City. He had a son, and his son, well, he had challenges in life. He had some learning issues, he had some mental challenges, he had some physical challenges. But he was a beautiful young son, and when he got to be about 8 or 9, every day his father would walk him to school, and he would pick him up after school, and they would walk home. And one day during the spring into the summer, they were walking home right before school would be done for the year. And they passed by a lot, and there was a baseball game going on with children about his own age. And he said, "Daddy, I would love to be able to play baseball like that." Well, his father knew that would never ever happen. But his father went over to where these boys were playing, and he said, "I know that you probably wouldn't even consider it, but my son would like to play baseball with you." Well, when he came over, there were a group of boys that were getting ready to play. They were just changing sides for the inning. And the pitcher was standing there, and all of his good friends took off. They went to their positions in the outfield. And so there was this one boy standing there, and there's his father making his case. And so the young boy said, "Bring him over." Well, when the father went to the son and said, "They're going to let you play," his smile was from ear to ear, and he straightened up a little bit more. He had no clue what a baseball mitt was, nor a bat. And so they decided that they were going to put him on their team, even though their team was down by 6 runs and it was in the 8th inning. They said, "We'll get him up to bat, probably in the 9th inning." And so somebody from the other team lent him a baseball mitt, showed him how to put it on, and how to break it in. And they put him out behind the shortstop, in a position that you only see being played in softball. Even though they're playing baseball, they made that position for him. And so there's that little boy out there the whole time, just punching his fist in that baseball mitt, trying to do what the other boys were doing, smiling from ear to ear. Well, it just so happened that three outs and that inning was over, and they hit it in the 9th inning, and their team was up to bat. Now, they did fairly well. In fact, they were down 6 runs. They picked up 4 runs during that last inning, and the bases were loaded, and there were 2 outs, and they went through the entire batting order. And it turns out the next one up would be this little boy. Were they willing to take a chance, knowing that they probably were going to lose this game, and if they lost this game, they would not be able to go on to the championship game? And yet every boy on that team went over and told this young man, "You're up." They put a bat in his hands, and he walked up dragging the bat. And when he got up the base, the pitcher from the opposing team came over and picked the bat up and put it on his shoulders and told him to wait, and he would throw the ball to him. And he went back, but not all the way to the mound, only halfway back. And he took this baseball, and instead of throwing his fastball, which he had quite a fastball, he kind of lobbed it in like a softball. catcher's mitt, and then the young boy swung. Of course, that was the first strike. But then some of the boys on his team came out, and one of them showed him how to not only hold it, but he stood there with him, told him how to crouch over the plate, and he said, "We'll swing together." And that pitcher went back to the same spot about halfway between the pitcher's mound and home plate, and he just let that thing take forever to get from his mitt over to the home plate. And at the right moment, the two of them together swung and hit that ball. It was only good enough for a pretty lazy line drive. In fact, it went right up to the pitcher's feet. And the young boy was smiling from ear to ear. He was jumping up and down on home plate because he hit the ball. And then his teammates said, "Run to first." Well, all the pitcher had to do was bend over and pick the ball up and just kind of sidearm it over to first baseman, and that kid would have been out, game over. The pitcher held onto the ball and kept throwing it up. And then just when that young boy was almost to first base, he took that ball and threw it way over the head of the first baseman out into right field. Well, that little boy hit first base, and the first baseman was encouraging him and said, "Go to second." And so off he ran to second base, and by then the right fielder picked up the baseball, and he saw what the pitcher was doing. So he let this young boy get to second base, and the second baseman was telling him, "Run to third, run to third." And so this right fielder took this ball and he threw it as hard as he could, way over the head of the third baseman. And so the third baseman went in, and the shortstop came over to cover third base, and this little boy hit third base, and he wasn't sure what to do, and the shortstop said, "Run home, run home." The third baseman got the baseball, and the shortstop came over, but instead of tagging him out, they ran with this young man. In fact, the entire field, the outfielders and those who were around the bases, all came over and ran with him all the way to home plate. And he jumped on that home plate. They raised him up on his shoulders, all 18 of them. All the players from both sides. Telling him that he hit a grand slam, and because of that, his team won, and they could go on to the championship. That is how Jesus would have us live our lives. Not thinking so much of ourselves, but thinking of those who might be considered less than we are. Looking out for those who are lost, or those who are weak, those who suffer, those who are hungry, those who are in prison, those who need food, those who need a drink. Willing to forget about ourselves, just as those kids did that day, so that they might lift up this young man, so that for once in his life, he might feel that he was valued and that he was important. For that moment, he was a champion. It was a day that he would never forget. And from that day forward, he began to carry himself a little bit differently. He began to feel like he had some value in this world. And even though he was different from others, he knew that others could love him just as he was. Because he hit a grand slam. He was going to the championship. Jesus said, "Don't worry about what happens today. Don't worry about building up those earthly treasures. Do as I do." When you do the will of God, then you're doing all things that are right, and you don't have to worry about buying your way into anywhere, because you will already be assured a place in heaven just by believing in me. But if you choose to drink from this cup, know that I'm not going to promise you all wine and roses, but I will promise you eternity in God's kingdom. choose to drink from the cup that I drink from. We will be given that opportunity here in just a short time when we share in what we call the Eucharist or the Holy Communion. We shall share the blood of Christ from that same cup. And Jesus asks us to come and drink, knowing full well what you're getting yourself into. But also saying that if you believe in me, I will never leave you alone. I will be your strength. I will see you through. When hardship comes, you will never be alone. I will be your strength. If people will hate you because of my name, I will be there with you. I will raise you up. That's what God asks of us. Those who would call themselves disciples. To believe and to go and do. To live as Jesus lived. Not being served, but being servants to all. Not by claiming power and authority, by strength alone, but doing so quietly and humbly as we sit with those who are alone, as we help those who suffer, as we are with those who mourn and those who are in prison. As Jesus said, when you do to the least of these, you do to me. That is what God asks us to do. Be careful what you wish for. God's listening. And He will answer your prayers. Might not be the way you hope for, but God will answer. And thank goodness He is who He is, because those prayers will be answered in a way that will only make us better and stronger, that will always point us and lead us into His kingdom.